India, a land of immense diversity, is home to numerous indigenous communities known as Adivasis, meaning original inhabitants, scattered across the country's hills, forests, and plains. These communities represent a rich tapestry of cultures, languages, and traditions. Adivasis have a deep-rooted connection to their ancestral lands and possess unique knowledge systems passed down through generations. Their lives are intricately interwoven with nature, relying on its bounty for sustenance and their cultural practices. For centuries, Adivasi communities thrived in relative isolation, their lives governed by their own laws and customs. However, the arrival of the British East India Company in the 18th century marked a turning point in their history. The company's insatiable appetite for resources and territorial expansion brought them into direct conflict with Adivasi communities, forever altering the course of their lives. The British viewed Adivasis as primitive and backward, their ways of life incompatible with the civilizing mission of the empire. This paternalistic and condescending attitude fueled policies that sought to assimilate Adivasis into mainstream society, often at the expense of their cultural identity and traditional rights. The impact of British colonialism on Adivasi communities was profound and far-reaching, leaving an indelible mark on their social, economic, and political landscape. At the heart of the British colonial project lay the systematic appropriation of land, the very foundation of Adivasi life and identity. The British viewed Adivasi lands as unoccupied wastelands ripe for exploitation, ignoring the intricate relationship between these communities and their environment. Through a series of legislative measures, including the Permanent Settlement Act of 1793 and the Forest Acts of the 19th century, the British government declared vast tracts of Adivasi land as state property. This land grab had devastating consequences for Adivasi communities. Deprived of their traditional means of subsistence, many were forced into exploitative labor arrangements under the colonial regime. The introduction of cash crops, such as indigo and opium, further disrupted traditional agricultural practices and led to widespread indebtedness among Adivasi farmers. Moreover, the British government's decision to grant land rights to non-Adivasi settlers, often from the upper castes, exacerbated tensions and led to the displacement of indigenous communities from their ancestral lands. The influx of outsiders also introduced new diseases and social ills, further marginalizing Adivasi communities. The dispossession and exploitation faced by Adivasis under British rule sparked numerous acts of resistance across the country. From the forests of central India to the hills of the northeast, Adivasi communities rose up in defiance against colonial oppression, often led by charismatic leaders who emerged from their ranks. One such uprising was the Santhal Rebellion of 1855–56, which witnessed the Santhal community, led by the legendary brothers Sidhu and Kanhu Murmu, taking up arms against the British government. The rebellion was a response to the brutal exploitation and oppression faced by the Santhals at the hands of British officials, landlords, and moneylenders. Though ultimately crushed by the superior military might of the British, the Santhal Rebellion remains a testament to the spirit of resistance that burned brightly among Adivasi communities. Another notable uprising was the Birsa Munda Rebellion of 1899 to 1900 in present-day Jharkhand. Birsa Munda, a young tribal leader, mobilized the Adivasi population against the British government's policies that threatened their land rights, cultural practices, and religious beliefs. Munda's charisma and message of resistance resonated with Adivasi communities, who saw him as a messiah fighting for their liberation. Despite its eventual suppression, the Birsa Munda Rebellion left an enduring legacy, inspiring generations of Adivasis to fight for their rights. British colonial policies had a profound impact on the economic lives of Adivasi communities, transforming them from self-sufficient producers to a source of cheap labor for the colonial economy. The introduction of the plantation system, particularly for tea, coffee, and rubber, led to the large-scale displacement of Adivasis from their lands and their recruitment as indentured laborers. These laborers were subjected to harsh working conditions, meager wages, and often brutal treatment at the hands of their colonial masters. The exploitation of Adivasi labor extended beyond plantations. The British government's demand for timber minerals and other forest products led to the establishment of forest departments and the imposition of strict regulations on Adivasi communities' access to and use of forest resources. Traditional practices of hunting, gathering, and shifting cultivation were criminalized, forcing Adivasis to depend on the whims of colonial officials for their livelihoods. Furthermore, the British government's introduction of a market-oriented economy led to the influx of moneylenders and traders into Adivasi areas. These outsiders often exploited Adivasis's lack of familiarity with market mechanisms, trapping them in cycles of debt and poverty. The economic marginalization of Adivasis under British rule laid the foundation for their continued economic deprivation in post-independence India.